The room is silent, except for Luke's muffled sobs. His head bows low, hands trembling, while Anna sits beside him, her own eyes heavy with sorrow. To the world, he is a billionaire. But here, stripped of titles and power, he is only a brother breaking in silence. The story drifts back to a crumbling house. Walls cracked and cold winds slipping through. A young Luke, restless and uncertain, clings to Anna's laughter for warmth. She is his anchor, his only friend. Together, they whispered dreams of escape, vowing nothing, not even poverty, will tear them apart when the world dismissed. Luke as nothing more than a poor boy chasing foolish dreams. Anna's voice cut through the noise. Neighbors laughed, their whispers sharp and cruel, calling him delusional, saying he'd never climb beyond broken walls. But Anna stood tall beside him, her belief unshaken. She told him he carried something greater inside, a fire no ridicule could put out. Each night, while others mocked, she leaned close and reminded him, one day, Luke, they'll see what I already see. Her faith became his shelter, a light against the darkness, and the reason he dared to keep dreaming. Luke's first attempts at building something of his own were nothing but heartbreak stitched together. He carried folders of ideas into polished offices, only to walk out with rejection letters that felt heavier than bricks. Investors laughed at his plans, some too blunt, others too cruel. Friends he trusted turned away the moment his ventures failed, leaving him in silence colder than the streets he grew up on. Each collapse pressed harder on his chest, convincing him he was chasing shadows. Yet through every slammed door, Anna was there. She wiped the bitterness from his face, picked up his broken spirit, and whispered the same words over and over, like a prayer stitched into his soul. Don't quit. Luke, you're not meant to quit. Her voice steadied him when the world tried to crush him, and it was her faith that kept him standing. Winter's chill seeped through the cracks of their home, sharper than the hunger clawing inside. Luke opened the cupboards, nothing but hollow shelves, emptiness echoing louder than words. Shame burned through him. He couldn't even place food on the table. He sat there in silence, fists clenched, as if holding himself together. Then Anna, quiet but steady, placed their last piece of bread in front of him. Eat, she whispered, her eyes tired, yet unyielding. You'll need strength more than I do. Luke's throat tightened, guilt fighting his hunger, but she pressed it into his hands. That bite of bread became more than survival. It was her sacrifice carved into his soul. That night, he swore he would rise, so she would never have to choose hunger again. Here's a cinematic, human, and emotionally powerful version of Outline 6. Fully connected to the previous scene, the night was thick with cold and quiet, the kind that makes every creak of the house sound louder than it should. Luke sat slumped against the wall, head spinning from another humiliating day in another office that turned him away. Another investor who laughed at his ideas. His spirit felt fragile, like it could shatter with the slightest pressure. He stared blankly at the darkness outside the window, wishing for a sign. Anything to tell him he wasn't chasing shadows? Then, from the next room, he heard her voice, Anna, speaking to a neighbor he hadn't noticed was visiting. My brother, she said with a calm certainty that made Luke's chest tighten, will build something the world cannot ignore. The words hit him like a bolt of lightning, sharp and alive. Every failure, every ridicule, every moment of shame suddenly felt smaller, insignificant compared to the fire those words sparked inside him. The cold forgotten, heart-pounding, eyes bright with a determination he hadn't felt in years. Anna's faith wasn't just comforting, it was fuel. That night, something shifted. The boy who had sat in silence and despair was gone. In his place stood a man ready to fight, ready to turn belief into action. In the cramped garage behind their house, Luke knelt over a battered computer, wires spilling like veins across the table. Dust clung to every surface, and the smell of oil mixed with cold winter air. His hands were raw, his back aching, but he worked with a focus that made the world outside disappear. Each repaired machine was a small victory, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, the fire Anna had ignited could become something real. Anna. Ever, his shadow and shield, carried their tiny creations through the streets. She smiled at every customer, even when doors slammed in her face, her energy contagious. Children peeked curiously, neighbors began to murmur, and slowly the first seeds of recognition took root. What had once been embarrassment, their makeshift workspace, their broken computers, was now turning into hope. Brick by brick. Luke watched Anna from the garage window one evening, her laughter carrying across the street, and felt a swell of pride that cut through the exhaustion. This wasn't just business. This was survival, ingenuity, and love woven together. The world was starting to notice, and for the first time, Luke believed they could truly rise. The nights stretched endlessly in their tiny garage. Luke hunched over scattered tools, soldering irons glowing dimly. Notebooks filled with scrawled ideas and diagrams surrounding him like a fortress of ambition. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. His eyes burned from staring at screens and circuits long past midnight. Anna sat nearby, cataloging inventory and humming softly, her presence steadying him when exhaustion threatened to break his focus. Days blurred into nights, and every small success felt monumental. When the first check arrived, it was modest, far from enough to change their world, but it was proof. Luke held the envelope in trembling hands, feeling the weight of every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment Anna had believed when others had mocked. He turned to her, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We're finally moving forward," he whispered, voice cracking with relief and hope. For a brief moment, the cold garage faded. There were no failures, no judgment, just the two of them, standing together in the glow of possibility. That first small victory was a spark, promising that the fire Anna had lit in him was no longer just hope, it was real, unstoppable, and beginning to shine. The morning sunlight barely reached the garage, but inside, a quiet excitement pulsed. Luke held the papers in his hands, official and crisp. The culmination of every late night, every broken circuit, every whispered word of encouragement from Anna today. They were no longer just two siblings fighting against the world, they were the founders of something that could not be ignored. Anna sat beside him, her notebook open, pen poised, eyes scanning every detail. She was more than a sister now. She was his silent backbone, the one who carried the weight of numbers, schedules, and endless doubts that threatened to crush him. When critics sneered, calling him inexperienced, foolish, or naive, Anna stood firm, her voice unwavering, defending him when he felt too tired to fight. Luke watched her, a swell of gratitude tightening his chest. Her faith, tireless and fierce, had turned into action, and together they moved forward as partners, dreamers, and warriors. Every signature on those papers wasn't just bureaucracy, was hope forged into reality. That day, the spark in the dark became a beacon, and the world would soon take notice of the brother-sister team determined to rise. No matter the odds, the world outside buzzed with calls, emails, and deals, but inside the hospital, time slowed. Anna lay pale, fragile, a thin blanket draped over her, machines beeping like a heartbeat Luke couldn't steady. The empire he had fought to build felt meaningless, hollow against the sister who had been his anchor, his guide, his fiercest supporter, bills stacked like mountains. Doctor's words blurred, and Luke's hands shook as he gripped her frail hand, trying to anchor himself to something real. Every strategy, every plan, every call felt trivial against the fear gnawing at him. He had spent years building success, but it all vanished when the person who had given him everything was lying in a hospital bed, uncertain of tomorrow. He paced the stark corridors, heart hammering, throat tight, eyes stinging. The bright offices, the glowing screens, the victories, they meant nothing without her. Losing Anna wasn't an option. She had carried him through hunger, ridicule, and failure. And now, faced with the thought of losing her, Luke finally understood that real success wasn't in wealth or recognition, it was in the lives we hold closest. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of machines and Luke's soft, restrained sobs. He sat at Anna's bedside, shoulders hunched, eyes red and raw. Outside, the world whispered his name with awe. Billionaire, unstoppable, visionary, but inside this room, none of that mattered. He was just a brother, terrified, powerless, watching the person who had carried him through every hardship, life frail before him. Luke's hands trembled as he held her arm, careful not to wake her, careful not to let his fear spill into her fragile world. Memories of empty cupboards, late nights, and whispered dreams flashed through his mind, and the weight of every sacrifice pressed down on him. Here, titles and money were meaningless. The only thing that mattered was keeping Anna alive, keeping the sister who had been his anchor, his conscience, and his heart safe. And for a moment, the billionaire vanished, leaving only a brother weeping alone. The first morning, Anna opened her eyes, sunlight spilling through the hospital blinds. Luke felt a tremor of relief, so deep it shook his chest. She was fragile, her hands thin, her voice weak, but she was alive. Every fear, every sleepless night, every ounce of despair dissolved into a single, overwhelming emotion: gratitude. He held her hand and promised silently that her sacrifices would never be forgotten. That day marked a turning point. Luke's tears became determination. His heartbreak transformed into action. The garage where they had once repaired old computers became the seed of a global enterprise. Offices sprouted in cities they had only dreamed of, each milestone quietly dedicated to Anna, the sister who had given him courage when the world offered only ridicule, who had stayed when everyone else turned away. He didn't expand to prove himself to critics or to flaunt wealth. Every deal, every new hire, every recognition was a tribute to the quiet, steady strength that had carried him through hunger, failure, and fear. Anna's laughter returned, mingling with the hum of innovation and progress. And Luke finally understood that true success is measured not in money, but in the lives we honor along the way. The boardrooms were grand, the offices gleamed with polished glass and steel, and the world watched Luke rise, counting every billion, every headline, every accolade. Yet for all the cameras, the flashing lights, and the praise, he still returned to the same small kitchen where dreams were whispered and sacrifices made. There, at the old wooden table, he shared bread with Anna just as they had years ago, her laughter carrying warmth through the quiet room. No one outside understood the weight behind his smile, the sleepless nights, the hunger, the fear of losing the one person who had been his heart. Only Anna saw the scars etched beneath the wealth, the resilience carved into his soul. She remembered the boy who had cried in a cold room, the nights spent repairing broken machines, the whispered promises of a future brighter than their past. Together, they had built more than a company. They had forged a story of survival, loyalty, and unshakable faith. Every milestone, every success, every empire rising in his name was a testament to their bond. Money could buy luxury, fame, and power, but it could never buy the strength born from love, sacrifice, and shared struggle. The screen softens to twilight, sunlight spilling across Luke and Anna at their old wooden table. Outside, the city glimmers with towers of steel and glass monuments to ambition. But here, the world narrows to just the two of them. Luke's eyes meet Anna's, reflecting years of struggle, laughter, tears, and unwavering faith. He leans forward, voice low but steady, carrying the weight of every sacrifice. Money can build towers, but love, sacrifice, and faith, those build lives. The words linger as memories flash: bare cupboards, broken machines, sleepless nights, hospital corridors, quiet victories. Every obstacle, every triumph, every tear shaped the life they shared. A testament to their bond that turned dreams into reality. Luke places a hand on Anna's shoulder, looking directly at the camera. If this story touched your heart, subscribe, because the next story might remind you of your own. The camera lingers on their faces, capturing quiet strength, resilience, and love. The sunset bathes them in warm light, a final reminder that the greatest victories are measured not in wealth, but in the lives we nurture and the hearts we touch.